All right. Hey guys, how's everybody doing today or tonight? Hope everybody's doing well. We're going to dive into making the immune system strong again. Also, I'm recording this, so if anybody wants to go back and watch, or if you, by the end of this, if there's something that you just loved and you want to share with somebody else, just let us know. We can get you the recording of it. But this is a very timely thing, or concept, I guess, is the immune system, not just coming after COVID, but also looking at just our world and our environment today, and looking at America as a whole, and that 1 out of 3 people right now in our country die of cancer. Okay, so you got 1 out of 3 people dying of cancer. That's a big deal, and they've shown in some of the statistics showing how it's going to get massively worse in the next years. With the COVID vaccine and all the other stuff that goes along with it. So very, very important topic. We're going to dive into a few things. This is Dr. Holly and Eleanor a while back, but I just love this picture because I think it's a picture of making it strong again. And that's one of the things we've really tried to do with our kids, is really focusing on keeping their body strong. Very rarely do we have any colds or sicknesses. And so, yeah, so we put this, everything I'm going to teach you tonight, we put into practice ourselves. So here's what you're going to learn. Here's what we're going to get out tonight. Okay, understanding of how the immune response works, a different perspective of getting sick and even cancer, what not to do for the immune system, what to do for the immune system, what to take, and then how do you actually test your immune system? So how do you know if you actually have a strong immune system or not? And that's a big deal, because you look at someone like Patrick Swayze, or you look at someone like Suzanne, I'm forgetting her name right now, but another actress, and there's been like the guy on Biggest Loser who ended up having a heart attack, and he felt fine before that, or Patrick Swayze again, who a week or 2 before he got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer said he felt the healthiest he's ever felt in his life. And so the testing part is really, really big to know how well your immune system is actually working. There's a few levels of how to do that. But the first thing, I think, to make a strong, healthy immune response, our immune system, is to actually understand what it is. And I think this is the biggest misconception that we think of. When we think of immune system or immunity, we think of vaccines, we think of the medical world. But the reality is that we have everything we need from day one. And I'm going to teach you guys that here in the beginning. And so it's this, almost the goal for tonight would be this light bulb moment that says, aha, I get it. No more having to treat symptoms, no more having to just take medications when we're sick and things like that, but actually understanding what the immune response is so that you can work with it instead of against it, which is happening, which is really what most people do, is they work against the immune response instead of helping it out when they're trying to get better. Okay, so it's about shifting your thinking. I think the quality of the questions that we ask will decide the answers that we get, or the quality of the answers that we get. And so if we say, you know, how do we not get sick, or how do we, if I'm sick, how do I just feel better? Well, then we're going to go say, okay, I'm going to take a medication to see how to feel better. But if I say, how can I make sure my body's strong so that I'm healthy long term? Or if I'm getting sick regularly, why am I actually getting sick? What's happening in my body? Then that question is going to lead us to much better answers. So the quality of the questions really is important. And this is starting out. I just want to define the immune system. I'm actually not a big fan of the term immune system. Okay. Well, first of all, can everybody, I guess I should ask this, can everybody hear me? I just kind of dove right into it. If y'all could give me just a quick comment saying, yeah, you can hear what I'm actually saying. I assume you can. Cool. Hope so. Good. Yeah, sweet. All right. Thanks, Kelly. So thanks, Cameron. Okay, cool. I figured you could, because no one said you couldn't, but just want to make sure. So it is our immune system that keeps us healthy as we drift through a sea of pathogens. And that's how they define it in medical news today. And I would say the immune system is really kind of a bad term for it, because there's no such thing as the immune system, because every aspect of our body plays a role in how well the immune system works. I'm going to show you some things about the nervous system, how it's intricately connected with the immune system, how they're actually one. So I like to think of it less of the immune system and what they wrote down here, the immune response. How do we have a strong, healthy immune response to make sure we're protected against pathogens, right? But also, even more importantly, long-term, make sure we don't get cancer, we don't have any of the major immune health issues, autoimmune diseases, things like that down the line. And that's kind of the big picture of it. And so so there's 3 levels of the immune system. Understanding we have an innate immune response. And this is my favorite thing to look at, because it tells us right off the bat that we were created. Remember, the scripture says we were created powerfully and fearfully and wonderfully made. And that truthfully though, that God didn't make mistakes. He gave us what we needed from the beginning. And so literally from day one, we have this innate immune response. It's inside of our bodies when we're created, and it's not a system, it's the whole body is part of that innate immune response. We're going to talk some about that, but it's the skin, it's the mucous membranes, it's our throat, our gut. All those things are part of the innate immune response. When you get stuffy noses and start draining stuff, that's actually an innate immune response. That's all good things that our body uses to not let pathogens in. Coughing, throwing up, all these things are normal innate immune responses. Fevers is a great example of an innate immune response. And so most medications, in terms of the quick medications that we take, are actually going to be geared towards slowing down that immune response, because we call those natural innate immune responses, we call them symptoms, and we don't like symptoms, right? We don't like a fever, we don't like coughing, we don't like throwing up. And so instead of that, instead of looking at it as a symptom, say, okay, I know I'm throwing up right now, but that's okay. I'll use this as a great example. Yesterday, I was in the car line to drop off Eleanor at school in the morning, and she said, Daddy, my stomach hurts. Next thing you know, she throws up. And I'm like, okay, great. And so she ended up coming to the South Park office with me yesterday morning, and she threw up one more time that morning. But then after that, she slept for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours. And then she woke up at the second part of the day and was perfectly fine, was running around, everything was great. So I'm glad she threw up, because whatever got in there, she got rid of. And so that's a good thing. That's our innate immune response. Okay. So if your kids get fevers, if they throw up, those are good things. We don't want to get rid of them. Adaptive immune response. This one's kind of cool. This is how a memory that our immune system creates. This is the kind of part of the immune system that they try to affect with vaccinations. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight, on why it's not as effective as they make it sound to be, and why it can actually cause harm instead of do good. And then you got passive immunity, which is a really cool one. This is from the birthing process. This is literally the vaginal canal gives some of that innate immune response with the bacteria that's given to the baby. Antibodies from the mother's breast milk, and then when the baby's still not born yet or being carried, antibodies from the mother actually keep that baby from viruses and bacteria and things like that taking it over, which is really, really cool, because when a baby's born, they have no microbiome. And microbiome, as you might know, is a big part of our immune response. And so the mother is a part of giving that. So breastfeeding is essential. It's such a big part of it. I know there's more natural formulas out there now and things like that, but nothing can replace breast milk. And so, that's something we've given for all of our kids. Luckily, Holly's been able to produce the breast milk. I know that's a problem sometimes, but just if she wasn't, we would have found ways to search out whether it was purchasing it somewhere else or whatever we had to do, because that is a crucial part of the immune system. Okay. All right. So now I'm still covering what is the immune system. How does it work? I think this is important. I'm a big fan that if you become an expert in something, you are able to take care of yourself. And so if you understand the immune system, your decision-making is gonna be a whole lot different than if I just say, here, eat this food, don't eat this food, take this supplement, don't take this supplement. I'm gonna get to all that at the end, at the second part of this, but I want you to understand how it works. So you got your immune response. You got innate immune response and adaptive immune response. Okay, you can see my arrow, innate and adaptive immune response. You have your protective and then your eradication system. Okay, so starting out, virus, protein, that's a virus is simply just a protein with messenger with RNA on it, and it's not alive. Okay, it needs us to actually thrive and grow. Okay, so think of it like a parasite almost. And so that viral protein comes in, immediately white blood cells, interferon, all these different innate immune responses happen. That mucus buildup in the throat, in the sinuses, throwing up, fevers. This is this innate immune response we talked about. Okay, and now as that happens, as that virus it experiences that, our body's trying to get rid of it, at the same time, and even past that, now the next step is the adaptive immune response kicks into gear. You have these little, we call these immunoglobulins that come in and they tag the cell and make antibodies so that it builds a memory of this protein. Okay, and this is the area, as I said earlier, that they use for vaccines to try to affect. Okay. The problem is they're bypassing this innate immune response and they're injecting straight into the bloodstream to this to try to affect this adaptive immune response. And their idea of success with that vaccine is whether or not they find antibodies. It's not whether or not you prevent disease down the road. The only success look at that is, does it produce antibodies? And so it's going to produce antibodies. It's going to produce antibodies to that virus in that vaccine. It's going to produce antibodies to the egg in that vaccine, many times to the peanut oil in that vaccine. It's going to create tons of antibodies. It's going to create a massive immune response. Imagine our immune system goes into hyperdrive when you inject something into the bloodstream. Okay, so that's why we see it we've seen such a massive rise in autoimmune disease with vaccines. So that's a big player in that right there. Okay, I don't have time to go a whole vaccine talk today, but just know that's the area they're trying to affect. That's it. Okay, you have 3 parts of the immune system here. This is the only thing a vaccine has any a role in. Okay, then little Pac-Man comes in, another part of our innate immune response, our natural killer cells and things like that come into play, and they come and they take out this this antibody and the virus. Okay, and then finally we create this long-term memory. So this antibody memory has a shelf life. Okay, that can be a month, 2 months, 3 months, and that's why they always have to talk about doing boosters. And this bottom part, the CD4 CD8 count, this is what they measure in someone, let's say, that has HIV virus and they're in AIDS, in the immunosuppressant diseases. They're measuring that to say how healthy is the immune system. If you look up CD4 CD8 count, go to the Mayo Clinic website, and it literally says on there, this is how we measure the immune system. So one of the best ways to tell if you have a healthy immune system that's going to prevent you from getting viral infections and cancers is to look at your CD4 and CD8 count. Okay, I'm going to talk about this here in a little bit on how important it is that this is strong. This is like going to the gym and muscle building and it lasting most of your life. Okay, very important. It's the most memory for the immune response. So this is the intricate system that happens here. Again, the vaccine only affects one part of it. You're going to need all of it to be affected. So there's no better way than an actual virus getting into your bloodstream. You have this innate immune response, you create the adaptive immune response, your natural killer cells, innate natural response gets rid of it, and now you have this long-term memory. There's no better way to create if you want to call it immunity, than that. And just so you guys know, there's no such thing as immunity. Okay, immunity isn't even a scientific term. It's a judicial term that they used to give for people, giving them immunity in certain circumstances, right? Immunity cannot happen in the body, and here's why. You could get antibodies to a virus. However, if this innate immune response is weakened and your body is no longer responding because the immune system is so suppressed because you're unhealthy, it doesn't matter if you have those antibodies, number one. Number two, if you get a vaccine and you have immune suppression, you won't create the antibodies in the first place. So the vaccine, number one, is worthless for that person, but it also is going to cause more damage to that immune response. That's why on the vaccine insert, it says, do not give. One of the contraindications for it is immune suppression or suppressed immune system, which I find crazy because our daughter with Down syndrome, Isabel, has, that's one of the common things with Down syndrome is they have a suppressed immune system. We haven't seen that with her, but that's something that they say. And then they say, well, she has a suppressed immune system. We have to give her a vaccine to help her immune system. But then you go read the insert and it says, don't give a vaccine to someone with a suppressed immune system. This is the reason why you wouldn't do that. Number one, it's not going to do anything. They're not going to create the antibodies. And number two, are likely not going to. And number two, they're not going to be able to get rid of it, and they can get really sick, lead to chronic inflammatory diseases like autism and a lot of other issues there too. So that was a quick little immune system response. Here's a cool little video. This is literally our immune system taking out a protein. Watch this. This is happening in our body on a regular basis. Boom, Pac-Man got it, and now it's going to start to take it out. Isn't that cool? And so we have all these immune factors happening on a regular basis, protecting our body like that. That's an innate thing that God gave us right there. It's always working, and from the day we're born to the day we die, that process is there for us. Okay, we don't need necessarily to take a bunch of things to make that happen. It does it on its own. This is really cool. I just talked about the CD4 CD8 ratio, and it says here, and what article is this again? Oops, sorry, guys. I had it on the top. Oh, there you go. University of Rochester .edu. So lymphocytes are a type of white blood cell in your immune system. This test looks at two of them, CD4 and CD8. CD4 cells lead the fight against infection. CD8 cells can kill cancer cells and other invaders. So you want to have a good fight against any infections like COVID or any other vaccine, any other virus. If you want to have a great chance of never getting cancer, then we work on strengthening the CD4 CD8 count. Okay, I'm going to talk about here in a little bit how cool actually getting viral infections, acute viral infections, or acute bacterial infections in our lifetime sets us up to have actually a stronger CD4 CD8 count. And a lot of times getting vaccines keep us from having that. This test looks at the ratio of CD4 cells to CD8. The ratio tells your healthcare provider how strong your immune system is. Raise your hand if your healthcare provider over your lifetime has ever checked your CD4 CD8 count. I've actually sent people to their healthcare provider, seeing if their insurance would cover this, to get a CD4 CD8 count and a whole immune panel, and the doctor says, I have no idea why he would want to see that. And the reason they say this is because there is no drug to help your CD4 and CD8 count. Okay, and so you got to remember your doctor's testing is always going to be based, and this is literally how it works. If they don't have a reason or a treatment for a test, then they're not supposed to do the test. Okay, and this is an immune panel where we test. You can test your CD4 and CD8 count along with all the other immune factors, right? The stuff you normally get tested down below here, along with natural killer cells, all these things here, which is really cool. Okay, and this is the best way to tell if you have a good, strong immune system, is actually test your body and see where it's at. All right, so I love this article. This is one of my favorite things to talk about with people, is it says an acute infection. So this is like getting the measles. And acute infections as means of cancer prevention, right? So you want to have a good, strong, healthy fight against cancer for your kids. Let them go play in the dirt. There's actually a study out there that says kids that eat their boogers live longer and have a healthier immune response. There's a study. I should have kept it. I don't remember where it was, but I did read this, and it's pretty funny. But it makes sense though, because it's bacteria. Your body's getting used to this bacteria. It's building an immune response. It's one of the best ways to make that happen. And so infections, it says here in the conclusion, infections may play a paradoxical role in cancer development with chronic infections. Okay, so a chronic infection. How would you have a chronic infection? Something like mono that's that's staying active in your body because of over stress. Something like Epstein-Barr virus. All these different viruses that can go chronic inflammation or chronic infections. Root canals are a chronic infection that causes our immune system to be weak over a lifetime and leads to cancers. Over and over again, they've shown that because it's constantly trying to get rid of it. We use food allergies as a great example. If you're eating eggs daily and you're allergic to eggs, well, you're creating a constant infectious response, and it leads to chronic infection. So there's a lot of different chronic infections that can be there, but just know that those chronic infections are what's going to lead to weaken your CD4 and CD8 count. Kind of like if you went to the gym, you worked out, and you just kept getting weaker. Right? I'm sorry, you worked out so much that you couldn't recover, and you would just keep getting weaker. Whereas if you went to the gym, you did a little bit of stressing on your body, and it rebuilt itself the next day, you rest and you recover. That's a chronic infection. Is kind of like working out nonstop every day. Your body's always trying to do it, and it weakens it. Whereas it says here, often being tumorigenic. An acute infection, though, is being antagonist to cancer. So acute infections actually strengthen the long-term immune system and your CD4 and CD8 count, and prevent not only you from getting viral infections in the future, but also cancer. And that's why I always say kids that play in the dirt have the best immune system. So if you do have a cold, right? If you do have sinus infections, if you do have or sinus congestion, if you do have a fever, if you have coughing or sneezing or any of that stuff, what do? Well, I grew up with the medicine cabinet, and we had that, the mirrored cabinet in the bathroom, and it was full of the Robitussin and the Tylenol and the ibuprofen. And ultimately, you would go there and you would get whatever worked for your symptoms. If you had a fever, you would take Tylenol. Guys, please hear this. Tylenol is not a safe medication. It's not a safe over-the-counter medication. Most countries don't allow you just to go into a store and buy Tylenol. Some reason in America we do, but in most countries you can't just do that. Tylenol is the #1 cause of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in our country. It's not a healthy, something healthy for your body. It also is a pyretic, which means antipyretic, which means it blocks the fever. Well, we talked about your innate immune response. You don't want to block your innate immune response. That's what's going to happen if we take a Tylenol. Here's this too, is that Tylenol, there's lots of studies on this, that taking Tylenol while you're pregnant causes actual inflammation and brain damage in the child, slower learning, lower IQs. All those things are actually related back to Tylenol, and even autism is related back to Tylenol. There's an ADD, ADHD is linked back to Tylenol use while you're pregnant. Okay, and so Tylenol is a big deal, but and ibuprofen is a great example of something can lead to heart attacks. They've shown. So there's just so many things. Robitussin, we're suppressing the immune system with these drugs. We never want to do that. And I know it can be tough with the allergies and the symptoms that come with it, but trust me, honoring your symptoms and saying it's cool. This is going to be fine. And handling it that way is going to be the best approach. Okay. And this is just some quick, if you want to learn more about, if you just want to research more and learn about like ibuprofen or aspirin, or even, you know, I mean, honestly, any health issue at all, greenmedinfo.com is amazing. I love it because it actually takes you to different articles, medical articles, and you can read about them, or health articles and scientific articles, and you can read those articles instead of them just giving your opinion. So I really love that. So you can go to greenmedinfo to check those out. All right, so I want to hit the virus and the germ theory real hard here. So the germ theory was created by Louis Pasteur. Okay, if you took biology course or microbiology, you learned this. So he created this germ theory, and the idea behind it was that germs were going to cause disease. Okay, and so he took that, and the medicine just ran with that, and that became the base of medicine from that day forward. And so to go back on this, for medicine to change their thought process on this and go back from it, it's just not going to happen. But everything they do is based on the germ theory, which means germs are out to get you, and your body is kind of at loss for that. What they don't tell you is that him and other scientists at the time kept studying that and actually showed that no, it's not actually germs that cause disease. It's the environment with which they're in will decide whether or not that germ, that bacteria, that virus will have the ability to grow. Best example I can give you of this, everybody remembers this usually, is that, well, he like I said that everybody remembers this usually. So most people remember this, but remember in high school, I think this is when we did it, but you took swabs and you would get your mouth full of a swab, and you would do like the bathroom and things, and then we put on a petri dish, and then all this nasty bacteria would grow, right? And just the grossest thing, like, oh wow, that's in my mouth. But does that happen in your mouth? No, it doesn't happen in your mouth, because it's not the environment. The environment that bacteria in your mouth is in is actually an environment that allows it to be there, but not take over, because there's all these other bacteria and all these other viral proteins and all this other yeast in there that actually keeps it all at bay. It's a microbiome. It all lives together. And so viruses is the funniest one of all. And I think it's the funniest because they've feared us into believing that viruses are out to get us. We need to take every vaccine in the world to prevent them. And that if there is one, we need to shut everything down for it. Well, here, look at this. Science, I think this is live science daily. So, however, the virus reign has nothing to do with flu season. Viruses are clusters of genetic material in a protein envelope that can't reproduce on their own. Okay, they have no way of doing anything on their own unless they have a good environment to be in. Okay, in fact, viruses are the most abundant microbes on the planet. It's crazy. They've been around for at least 300 million years and are more abundant on Earth than anything else. All right. And so approximately 320,000 types of viruses infect mammals alone, according to these studies. This is crazy, guys. 100 million light years away if you were to collect all the viruses on this planet. If they were out to get us, we would not be here. We would be done, okay? And so here's the thing. How do we get viral infections? We get viral infections when our body is setting a stage for that virus to survive and grow, okay? If our body is healthy, our immune response is healthy, we're gonna kick it back out just like I showed you in the beginning. And and we know that, and the reason you know that is every one of us has been in a situation where somebody in that room, or maybe a family member got sick, and then another family member got sick, but then two of the family members didn't get sick. Well, how did they not get sick if everybody else got sick? Well, their immune response kept it away. And so it's actually not staying away from germs and being fearful of viruses and all these other things. It's strengthening your immune response so you're not having to worry about those things, and being okay if you get them, and it's trusting in your body to do what it's made to do instead of suppressing it with a drug. And that we do that for our kids. I'm telling you guys, if you do that for your kids, if you have that mindset for your kids, not only are you going to live out not having any fear about this situation, but you're also going to be able to say, okay, I have the ability now to have faith that my body's going to heal itself. And there's natural things you can do to support the immune system, not suppress the immune system. And I'll talk about those some here in a second. Okay, the skin microbiome, I got to hit on this because this is so important for that innate and adaptive immune response. Our skin is covered in bacteria. It's a certain acidity level, and needs to get a little bit acidic to keep a good environment of bacteria and viruses and fungus on there. And they keep each other in balance. And so when we go in and we take something like an antibacterial soap or an antibacterial lotion, especially if people doing it daily, you're actually killing your microbiome on your skin. And now that is part of your, a huge part of your innate immune response and your actual defense system. And guess what happens? Now, viruses that your body was supposed to protect you with can get on you and stay on you and live on you. Or bacteria, like we have certain types of staph that keep us away from the staph we don't want coming in our body. Those things actually happen because of antibacterial use, not prevented by an antibiotic or antibacterial lotion use. So huge deal, and not to mention there's carcinogenic stuff in the lotions and all that other stuff. But that's the main thing, is that we want good healthy skin. So to help build your skin up, use things like apple cider vinegar to help the acidity level on that. They actually make lotions that help replace the bacteria in your skin, just like they do probiotics for your gut too. Okay, and so instead of saying how do I feel better versus let's look at it differently and say, how do I get better? So instead of going to the pills, let's say, okay, how do I actually get my body healthy? And here's where we are now. I talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but I'm focusing this immune response, or this immune system webinar on cancer. And so right now, when it comes to cancer, 1 in 2 men, 1 in 3 women are projected to be diagnosed with cancer right now. Global cancer cases are expected to rise. This is crazy, 75% by 2030. Imagine 75% of 1 in 3 already have it. In 2014 alone, there are 1.65 million projected new cases of cancer in the US. Cancer is the leading cause of death in children, which is the scariest thing ever. And from ages 1 to 19, and cancer is the second leading cause of death overall. So it's crucial that we don't wait for symptoms. It's that we actually work on building up that immune system in our kids. Guys, look at this. Cancer is the second leading cause of death in children ages 1 to 19. The main reason for the cause of cancer is lifestyle issues. Go any Mayo Clinic website, anything like that, they're going to tell you that one of the leading things is environmental problems, chemicals, high radiation areas, things like that. Environment or lifestyle choices, so the foods we put in our body, the things we drink, all those things. So if our kids are getting sugar on a regular basis, that's a massive suppressant in the immune system. If they're eating foods that are chronically infecting them, like gluten acts as an infection to the body. So if somebody's eating a sandwich every single day, well, now they have this constant chronic infection in the gut, and that leads to a suppressed long-term immune system, which can lead to cancer. So these are things we can absolutely change. When somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, it was 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago when that started happening and building up. Obviously, the childhood cancers grow quicker, but it's that idea that doesn't just happen overnight for most cases. Okay. Okay. So what is cancer? Our body has 17 trillion cells. Okay. Normal cell death, apoptosis, is supposed to happen to those cells. They go through a life cycle, they do their job, they die off, our body gets rid of them. Cancer occurs when a group of cells doesn't die and they just keep multiplying. And there's a reason for those cells not dying. I'm going to teach you guys today that cancer is not a disease. Cancer is simply something, well, I guess it is dis-ease, but it's simply an adaptation of our body to survive. Okay. And this is why I love looking at the human body and seeing, like, hey, it was all created for a reason. Everything that happens in our body is for a reason. And so the way cancer works, and this study actually talks about it great, and so I wanted to share it, but a new hypothesis, cancer is a natural wound healing related process. Okay, so cancer, we know that cancer occurs when appears only to those multicellular organisms with complicated wound healing capacities. So humans, mammals, things like that. Second, that wounds considered as a risk factor can be identified in all cancers in clinics. So we know that a wound is what leads to that cancer. Now, I'm not talking about a cut with a knife. I'm talking about stress over and over again on the digestive system in the colon, leading to ulcers, leading to polyps, leading to ulcers, leading to cancer. Okay, it's physical stress, it's chemical stress, it's the emotional stress in our body, and those create this wound concept and lead to overgrowth of cells. Think of it like this. Think about if you're barefooted and you walk across concrete and you're doing that daily. Well, what does your heel and what do your feet build up? It puts down more cells to that wound. It's a small wound, but it puts down more cells and builds a callus. Okay, so it's actually an adaptive response. It's a cell overgrowth. The callus is an overgrowth of cells, but it does it to protect you. Okay. In the body, in those organ systems, it does the same thing. When there's wound buildup, the body's throwing down this scar tissue, and the cancer builds up, and it will keep doing that until it is healed. So if the human body is still in that stressed response, if they're still having that constant bombardment of inflammation on the GI tract, whatever the cancer is related to, if your liver's still not getting rid of estrogens properly, all those things, it's going to keep creating that cancer until it gets there. And eventually, if that doesn't happen, if there's no healing actually happening, the body actually dies. And so many times because of blood flow issues with too much cancer, also because it actually affects organ tissues, but the cancer itself doesn't actually kill us. It's the overgrowth of it that actually affects us, if that makes sense. So what I'm getting at here is that cancer is actually an innate immune response to an environment that our body it cannot survive in. A cell has to survive, okay? And that's all, I mean, a cell has to mutate in order to survive in these situations. And I'll talk about those situations here in a second. This is a great example of breast or cervical cancer. And how can you tell if you're someone that's susceptible to breast or cervical cancer? Okay, and this is for men or women. Breast cancer is the fastest leading growing cancer in men right now. Oops. So it's fastest growing cancer in men right now. So we have this Dutch hormone test showing us 3 pathways that our liver uses to get rid of estrogens, okay? And so estrogens, our body uses those, men and women, we both use those for different aspects of our health and reproduction and things like that. And then our body has to get rid of it, okay? And so they always tell you that breast cancer, cervical cancer are estrogen cancers, just too much estrogen buildup. Well, the reason estrogen builds up is because the liver is not getting rid of it properly, okay? And so these 3 pathways, this 4-OH pathway here, this red one, we want that to be about 7.5 to 11% of the pathway used to get rid of estrogen in our liver. It causes, if not detoxified properly and it's used that pathway too much, it actually causes damage to DNA. So this person right here, they have a buildup of estrogens, plus the pathways they are using to get rid of estrogen, they're at a 19. Every patient with breast cancer that I've seen so far come into our clinic has been a 15 above, 15 plus on this 4-OH pathway. And so literally, if you're not using this pathway, the likelihood of you getting breast cancer or cervical cancer is very, very low. So I love this test because it tells us exactly what pathways your body's using, and then we can do things to push you against this pathway. So before you even do this test, we know that things like something called DIM, or something that's found in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, broccoli sprouts, things like that, actually will pull estrogens from the red pathway here, this 4-OH pathway, to this pathway and help cleanse the body better. So there's actually foods that help us do that. And if it's at a high level, we use high doses of that to make sure we're doing it clinically. Okay, so it's kind of cool. And so the one thing I didn't hit on here is that, so cancer, it's an innate immune response. And so cancer, a normal cell doesn't live in a sugar-filled, deoxygenated environment. When our environment's acidic and it's deoxygenated, not enough oxygen, it's full of just over amounts of sugar, bombardment of sugar, the cancer cell will actually mutate itself into that cancer cell to survive. Okay, otherwise it just dies off. So it's kind of like a heart attack, for instance. A heart attack, believe it or not, is a response our body takes in an attempt to survive. If the heart rate's too high, if the blood pressure is too high, it has to stop. There's a point of where it just doesn't go anymore. And so everything our body is doing is, believe it or not, I know this is hard to believe, but everything our body is doing is all meant for survival. That's all the body does. It doesn't just start messing up. Okay. So, and I like that because that means we have control of how to help build it up. So instead of trying to say, how do I prevent cancer? What we want to look at is, how do I keep my cells healthy and my immune response healthy to prevent that? Okay. So, and we look to do that by saying, okay, what is health? What's the definition of health? How do we know if we're healthy? Forever, we've said that it's you eat good. I missed that part. You eat good if you exercise. We look at people like, you talked about Patrick Swayze in the beginning. We look at people, if you look healthy, if you feel healthy, then you're healthy. But the truth is, the definition of health is right here. And so health is the optimal functioning and healing of your body at 100%. It's not the absence of disease. Okay, so as we make a shift from, okay, what is the immune system? How does it work? Okay, now what's cancer? How does it work? How do we now make sure we're strengthening up the immune response so that we don't get cancer, so that we don't get chronic infections, autoimmune diseases, things like that? Well, we look first at how well our body is functioning and healing. And the number one thing we do in our clinic first is to look at the nervous system, because your brain controls all of that. It controls your heart rate, your respirate, your blood pressure, your hormones. Everything stems through that process. They call it the parasympathetic versus your sympathetic nervous system that literally runs everything, okay? And so you can see the picture here, all these purple nerves and all these blue nerves, every nerve you see here, none of those have feeling to it. So you don't know if you have damage to any of these nerves until you actually have an organ problem. Okay, one of the best ways to look at the nervous system is through looking at the spine, looking at the structure of it, looking at how well it moves, because we know that creates a stress response. If it's chronically out of alignment, if it's not moving properly, it literally puts your body into a stress response, which, because of all of our health issues, is specifically suppression of the immune response, is stress. You're going to notice that every workshop I ever do, it goes back to this, because that is the cause of it all. Now, how to address those might be different for each process, and how to get your body back into balance might be different. But it starts with too much physical stress, too much chemical stress, and too much emotional stress. We know with cancer that I've read studies on breast cancer that women who go through a traumatic experience in their life, like a divorce or loss of a child or things like that, have a 1,500 times increase, 1,500 time increase chance of getting breast cancer. Isn't that crazy? And so we know that emotional stress, chemical stress, like being around, we know specifically like the heavy duty chemicals like Roundup and things like that can lead to chemical stress. And then physical stress, car accidents you're unhealed from, physical stress of sitting all day long, which is the biggest physical stress right now in our body. So all those things stem back to affecting the nervous system. Okay, this is a really cool article. There's an interconnection between the nervous system and the immune system. Okay, what they've showed is, and they literally had to rewrite the textbooks after some of this research that we looked at here, because we used to think that the brain was just a separate organ. It didn't really play a big role. In many cases, they didn't even talk about it. And the more and more we learn about the brain, the more and more we learn it is actually intricately connected with the immune system, and that the most of the studies are showing that they are one. There is no separate immune system and brain. They're actually all one. And so it all plays a role. And so this right here says, a newly discovered reflex arc mediates a process which leads to a disruption in the hormones secreted by the adrenals, which in turn results in an increased susceptibility to bacterial infections. Okay. This first part, what that ultimately means is issues with the nervous system. This is why someone that has a stroke has an increased chance of bacterial infections and things like that. Okay, you actually secrete hormones from the adrenal glands, which reduce the immune response and lead to those infections. Okay, sorry. This often leads to severe infections such as pneumonia, urinary tract infections, which hamper nervous system tissue regeneration as well as rehabilitation. Okay, nervous system uses adrenal hormones as part of an indirect path of communication, which results in the rapid breakdown of many immune cells. And it just keeps going on. This alteration in hormone levels led to a dramatic decrease in the number of many immune cells, particularly affecting the precursor T cells and B cells. This is all our adaptive immune response right here. And so this is why I went with chiropractic here, why we've seen such a crazy increase. And there's actually studies on this that show that in some cases, that the studies that they did, at least on this, show that people that get long-term, so wellness care, not just get adjusted a few times in their life, but long-term chiropractic care have a 200 times stronger immune response. That means that, and they measured the CD4, CD8 count specifically for that, not to mention less, pharmaceutical use and all these other issues. But it's not because of chiropractic care. It's because we're keeping a healthy and balanced nervous system. It's the start of it all. So if you're having you have a good eating plan, you have a good supplement plan, but you're not getting any kind of chiropractic care, you're not doing anything for nervous system health, postural health, spinal movement, all those things, and you're sitting all day long, it'll actually counteract all those other things and they won't matter. And that's how someone can eat right, exercise, do everything seemingly right, and still get cancer when they're 50. It's because the body's still not healing. It's not functioning and detoxing and doing everything it's supposed to properly. Okay, so foods are meant to support it. They don't necessarily run it. Okay, so the cause of inflammation, that's the immune response. That's what leads to cancer, is the physical, chemical, and emotional stresses. Okay, now how do we implement this daily? What do you actually do? So you got emotional stress here. I found an emotional stress picture, right? So we have these emotional stresses like family. We have family and relationships. We have money. We have unmet expectations. We have work. We have all these emotional stresses in our life. How do we do something about the emotional stress so it doesn't lead to a suppressed immune system? Well, number one, we look at our environment and we say, okay, what's unnecessary? What emotional stresses don't I need? I don't need the emotional stress of the news every night. So I'm going to take that out. I don't need the emotional stress of maybe somebody that is always talking negatively and just isn't enjoyable to be around. I don't need certain negative stretches in my life. They're not something I have to have. Now, if you're married and you have an emotional stress with your spouse on a regular basis, well, don't go divorce your spouse. Let's start to address the problem and counseling and all that, but also doing things that can help counteract that emotional stress and having time for yourself in the peace management. One of my, and looking at how we're viewing it. And so this is my favorite quote, and I didn't probably come up with it, but I've heard it so many times, I think I'm just going to take it. So your life will always be the way you perceive it to be. Change your perception, you'll change your life. So if you're in an argument and seeing things seem left in your life, we have the opportunity to say, oh, woe is me. We have the opportunity to say, man, life is just rough. And it's just so hard. It looks like everybody else is getting ahead and I'm not. We have the opportunity to say, okay, my child just got diagnosed with this. How did this happen to me? Why? And we ask all these questions about that. Or we have the opportunity to say, okay, this is an opportunity for growth. This is an opportunity. This is what life's about. It's a journey. So, this stressor is coming to me. I want to get excited about that and say, okay, what's this going to lead to? Who am I going to be after this? What's going to come of this? And I say this very easily because I'm teaching it right now. I'm not actually in the middle of living it. It's not easy. It's something you have to practice regularly, no matter how severe the problem is. One of the craziest things to see is when someone loses a family member, like a child or something like that, or they're going through a crazy divorce, but they're able to just see things differently. They're able to look and say, okay, my God's powerful. That's my rock. That's what I'm focusing on. I have faith in that. They're able to look at the world as a whole different perspective, and their body's not being affected by that stress. There's studies that show that if you see stress as something that causes cancer, heart disease, diabetes, all that other stuff, that's what it's going to lead to. But if you see stress as something that is good and healthy for you and good for you, it's going to strengthen you at the right amount, and you take those stressors and use them for your good, then that's what it's going to do for you. It's pretty cool. So perception is huge. When you see things come on, and maybe it's at work or maybe it's in the news, also thinking to yourself, is this something I can control? And if it's not something you can control, give yourself freedom to let it go, because there's nothing you can do about it. And those are unnecessary stresses right there. And focus on the things you can control, because that brings you power and makes you actually feel empowered. And that's the opposite of stress, right? That's actually a good stressor there. Okay. So there's just some simple thoughts. Now I put this picture because this is what we feel like. If you really look outwards on yourself, this is probably what you look like this is what we look like when we're high stressed and frustrated and everything else. So sometimes it's good to joke about it and look back and think like, okay, I'm just being a baby right now. I need to change my perspective on this. At least that's how I operate. That's how my mind works. All right, so that's emotional stress. So toxicity, how do you deal with toxic stress on the body to prevent cancers and help the immune response? Well, you look at the things, again, that are unnecessary. We don't have to have Diet Coke and Pepsis and all these other massively filled sugar drinks or synthetic sweetened drinks with tons of acid that could clean a car battery. Why would we put that chemical stress in our body? It makes zero sense whatsoever. It's been extremely good marketed, and we become addicted to it. Same with fast food. Why would we eat that food? When you look at what's in that food, there's no reasonable reason, no good reason to look at that and say, okay, I'm going to eat that, except for we've been marketed to it and it's got us, and now we ate it, or now you ate it. I don't need it anymore. I'm not going to put myself in that box. I hadn't had fast food in 15 years. I see it as plastic, but now you eat it, and then MSG, multiple types of MSG, all these addictive flavorings and things like that are in there. By the way, a lot of these natural flavors they use in this food, just research natural flavors. There's no actual regulation on this, and they don't have to tell you what it is. Pepsi, for instance, Nestle, they use natural sweeteners that come from actual aborted fetal cells that help them create that flavor. No joke. Go look into it. It's not as conspiracy theory. It's actually what they use. So natural flavors are super toxic. So you're eating foods that aren't really food. Well, that's unnecessary. I don't need to go to Chick-fil-A and have a chicken sandwich, which is incredibly toxic, full of MSG, and it causes addiction. I'm just going to go over to Harris Teeter or Whole Foods or Earth Fare. I'm going to grab some organic meat, maybe some organic lunch meat that just has that meat in there, and then I'm going to go grab an avocado or maybe a cucumber, and then I'm going to eat. And that's going to be my meal. And so real food, even if it needs to be quick, we can get those places that we just don't think about, like the grocery store. Cosmetics, this is the biggest one. If you can make this change, especially for women, if you can make this change, it's a game changer. You don't feel when you put lipstick and makeup on that it's causing disease in your body. But I can promise you that xenoestrogens, the massive chemicals that absorb into the skin, it's a huge, huge stress on the body, and eventually over time can absolutely lead to cancers, especially someone that's susceptible to cancer. So if you look back at your family line, if you've had a big history of certain types of cancer, that could mean you're susceptible. You have more of a genetic predisposition to that cancer. And so these are the kind of things that push the genetics into that role, or push your genetics into gear. Okay, it's called epigenetics. Our lifestyle actually turns genes on and off. So when you look at it, you want to look at that and say, okay, cosmetics, is that something I really want to, I really need to have the chemical stuff, or can you go more natural? Things like Beauty Counter, or I'm not good at this part because I don't use any cosmetics, but there's tons of them out there now. They're having cleaner products every day. So looking at that, looking at your cleaning products in your house, do you really need bleach? Do we need all these high chemical things to clean? We haven't used them in 15 years and our house is very clean, so you can use things like vinegar, things like essential oils. There's all kinds of stuff that breaks through oil and all kinds of stuff that kills viruses and bacteria at a level that is good, that you don't need bleach and all these other toxic things that cause disease. Heavy metals in our environment, in our air, we can't necessarily control those. So I don't focus too much on them because we can't control them, other than trying to get my body detoxing. But heavy metals, having amalgam fillings, these things suppress the immune response. These are chronic infections. Think of it that way. Remember that chronic infection thing? It's something your immune system and your body, your immune response is always attacking. It's always having to detox out. Not only is it taxing on the liver, it's taxing on the nervous system. And many of these things like heavy metals are neurotoxic. Brain fog, memory loss, Alzheimer's, all that stuff, they're neurotoxic. So it's a big picture. Toxicity is a big one, but let's eliminate the ones we can actually control. Look at your cleaning products, look at your beauty products and the stuff you put on your skin, look at the stuff that goes in our body by following something like a non-inflammatory diet, which we're going to talk about here in a second, and then taking this. So take a picture of this, just pull your phone out, or if you're on your phone, hit a screenshot. This right here, you can also go on our I'll give you a QR link here at the bottom of this PowerPoint, or here at the end of this PowerPoint, and this is a PDF you can get on our website too, on our blog. But this is the area you want to look at when you say, okay, how do I get rid of toxins in my environment? You want to address all these different areas, okay? And you just slowly start to take them out and clean it up. Okay. Here is some ingredients in our food system that is absolutely toxic, denatures cells, and leads to cancers. Suppressed immune system as well, causing chronic infections, autoimmune diseases, aspartame. Any of these synthetic things can absolutely lead to an autoimmune response. MSG, fibromyalgia has been linked back to MSG, causing damage to the glutamate receptors in the brainstem, monosodium glutamate. It'll actually overstimulate that and cause pain throughout the whole body. Aspartame linked to a lot of different neurological issues. Same with Splenda. Synthetic sweetener, or your refined sugars, all these bad oils. Okay, this QR link I'm going to give you gives you at the bottom of the PowerPoint also has good fats versus bad fats, so the oils you want to stay away from. Okay, so you can do kind of a quick clean screenshot of this, but these are core stuff that if you remove and stay away from it, you're going to be way better off. And hey, if your kids have trouble focusing, sinus issues, or allergies, these things will make a big difference, making sure they're not eating them. I found that sometimes we do these webinars, we do these talks, or even do one-on-one consults with people, and they change their stuff for themselves, but then their kids are still doing everything wrong. I don't understand that at all. That's maybe press in a little bit and say, okay, guys, it takes years for that cancer. Remember, the number one cause of death in kids is cancer. All this stuff they're eating, high fructose corn syrup, all the stuff in the fast food is what causes cancer. It's not a maybe it causes it. It is what causes cancer. We know it for an absolute fact. And the studies have shown that these things lead to cancer. And some of them actually say on there they're carcinogenic. So we just have to realize that even though it's a common part of society, even though it seems normal, it is not normal for our kids to be eating this food, and their bodies are showing it. All right. Now, this is the eating plan I recommend for preventing cancer, preventing chronic immune response issues. And this is just kind of generic, right? This is everybody should have at least at a minimum follow this. It's a non-inflammatory diet. You can get this book in our office, but it's reduce, remove sugar and grains, look at your bad fats versus good fats, organic grass-fed and free-range meats, reduce toxins, and cook your meals and eat as a family at least one time a day. That's a good emotional one, okay? That's your eating plan. Take a food allergy test, add to that to make it more specific for you to get rid of the chronic infection concept. All right, rest. You can't have an immune system. Like you could do everything I just told you perfectly, but if you don't sleep, it's all downhill. So bed before 10 p.m., 7 to 8 hours of sleep for everybody, 10 to 12 for kids. No screen time, an hour before bed. This is huge for good actual quality sleep. Get rid of Wi-Fi, turn it off at night. You can set a timer, put a timer just like you would for Christmas lights on your Wi-Fi where it turns off at night. And then we use shungite actually to help with electromagnetic frequencies from all the electrical units and Wi-Fi and stuff in our house. Make sure it's pitch black. And if you're going to use light, make it a red light because that doesn't actually stimulate the pineal gland in our brain. Pretty cool. All right. Finally, with the immune response and having a healthy immune system, I've not, in 12 years of practice, trust me, I don't have to adjust. We can just do nutrition. The reason we do chiropractic here is one reason only. I've never seen anything work better than it for just about everything. And the reason is because for the movement of and this has to be the reason why, and there's lots of studies on this, but to logically think why, 90% of the stimulation to your brain comes from your spine moving. And so a good functioning full movement in each joint in your spine actually helps your brain be stronger. It gets rid of a stress response, brings your body back into homeostasis, and your body heals itself. Over and over again, we see that. The people that they get chiropractic care and it doesn't fully heal, it's because there's more to it than that. It might not be the only answer, but it is a powerful tool we can use to help get the body back in balance. And it might not be the only part. Maybe it's that along with changing your eating, changing your emotional stress, and affecting those other areas that we talked about before. I call these the 5 essentials. So we have the 5 essentials. You have chiropractic care or nervous system health. You have nutrition. You have detox. You have the mindset, and then you have exercise or oxygen, lean muscle. Those are the 5 things that we want to focus on when it comes to creating a good immune response. Okay, so this is the fun page. This is the one everybody wants to know. What can I take to help a good immune system? Here it is. Here's what you can take to help a good immune response. There's lots of things. Here's just a quick list. I didn't put zinc on there. Notice that. If you take too much zinc, you become deficient in magnesium. I'm not saying don't take zinc. I'm just saying make sure you actually need zinc. I know it became very popular during COVID, but just make sure, yes, a lot of people are zinc deficient, but make sure you actually need it because magnesium deficiency is just as bad. So you want to be aware of that. But these are great herbs that help the immune response, help the adrenals, which we just learned the adrenals and the nervous system are a huge part of the immune response. Colloidal silver is a great medicine tool cabinet. And I say it that way in that you don't take it, daily, but it's amazing antiviral and antibacterial. Pink eye, cuts, sore throat, sinus congestion, all those things. Anytime you know that your body's trying to fight some sort of virus or bacteria, we use colloidal silver. D3 on a regular basis is part of the immune response. Vitamin C and D3 are a huge part of that innate ability, your body's innate immune response. They're essential for it. Reishi mushroom has actually been shown in many, many studies to completely prevent COVID from coming into our system and becoming active. And personally, Dr. Holly in our family, Dr. Holly took it for 3 years and she never got COVID. So reishi mushroom is a great one. Chaga is also an amazing mushroom as well for immune response. These are called medicinal mushrooms. Probiotics, digestive enzymes, and apple cider vinegar are also very good because the gut is such a huge part of the immune system. And then turmeric. I just read, I didn't put any of these on there, but a ton of studies about turmeric and its effect on preventing and killing cancer. So turmeric is a great root to take on a regular basis, amazing for the inflammatory response. There's so many out there, guys. These are the ones that I like that we use on a regular basis. I don't take all this every day. If I feel a cold coming on, I'm going to crank some elderberry. Astragalus, I'd probably take it, I don't know, for a month, every couple months. D3, I take daily. The ACV on a regular basis. Turmeric, almost daily. Ashwagandha or some sort of an adaptogen daily to help the body handle stress. 1 second. So I have Okay. So Eleanor came in. I'll be in just a second, okay? All right, Eleanor came in. She wanted to tell me it's time for bed, so I got to close up here soon, guys. Good news is I'm almost done. Okay. So these are the tests that you want to do for the immune system. You got the immune panel, so it's always real life. All right, she just came in. So immune panel, autoimmune panel, viral panel, GI test, and adrenal hormone testing. Okay, this is an example of the immune panel. I showed you guys that. This is an extensive look. I guarantee none of your doctors have ever done this immune panel on you. It's huge. It tells you a ton about how well your immune response is. The GI testing, that is huge in terms of what's happening in your GI tract. This is 90% of our immune responses in our digestive system. A good, healthy digestive system is huge. It tells us about inflammation, if you're breaking food down or not. It tells us what your microbiome looks like. It tells us how well your liver and gallbladder are working. It also tells us if you have any bacterial, yeast, or parasitic infections. Those are chronic infections. So this person over here has bacterial and yeast infection. Well, that's a chronic infection if we don't get rid of it. Okay, food allergies are amazing in terms of looking to see if what your body doesn't do good with. What does it create an immune response to? Okay, and then this is the Dutch test. Two parts of this Dutch test that I love to look at for the immune system. It tests your adrenals. So this is your adrenals, an adrenal test 4 times throughout the day. And you can see up here, this person's highly stressed, tons of cortisol. When we're high in cortisol, we're not in a huge immune response at that time. But the body actually has to convert to cortisone, which is the anti-inflammatory. So cortisol going up creates lots of inflammation. Cortisone has to get rid of it. If it doesn't, we're going to be inflamed. And so this person is constant inflamed, constant immune response. So it tells us how well those are converting with each other. Okay. And then this autoimmune panel, it goes through all these different antibodies to tell if somebody has an autoimmune response. Typically, if you go to a doctor, and you have joint pain, they're going to test antibodies for rheumatoid arthritis and a few other things, but they're not going to do a full layout. I've had multiple patients with thyroid issues, never tested for autoimmune response. We test them, we find out it's an autoimmune issue, and we work on the immune system, not the thyroid. Most issues people deal with in terms of organ stuff is typically going back to the immune system. Psoriasis is a great example of that. Eczema is a great example of that. Okay, viral panel. This tells us if you have any old issues like mono, Epstein-Barr virus, herpes, any of those things that constantly bombard the immune system. And these many times are the reason people feel sick all the time if we don't get rid of or don't help knock them back down by strengthening the immune response back up. Okay, so those are the main tests that we do for specifically to see if somebody has a good immune response and to figure out why it's not working properly. Okay, so guys, sorry, I'm going to go quickly here because it's getting into bedtime, but I hope y'all got a lot out of that. And this right here is a QR code. You can just put your camera up to it, and that takes you to our link tree, which has our YouTube channel. Make sure you're watching that. We have tons of videos on there. Please share that with people as well so we can help grow that. It also takes you to the Understanding Inflammation ebook, and that tells you 10 ways to tell if you're inflamed and 10 ways to reduce it. And a bunch of other things, the bad fat versus good fat, the toxic home list, and a lot of other stuff on there. So take a look at that. And the key is ultimately is to become your own health expert, not just to watch a webinar every so often, not just to go do natural things, but to learn it, implement it, and then teach it to everyone else. So everything you learn tonight, pick a few of those things you're going to teach someone about. And yeah, I hope you guys continue to grow in terms of learning. Thank you all so much for jumping on tonight. I'll have this recorded. I'll make sure I stop the recording. And if you want to rewatch it or you want someone else to watch it, just let us know and we'll send it over to them. All right. All right. You guys have an awesome night and talk to you next time. I got to figure out how to stop the recording.